All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to give it just a few minutes for folks to get logged on. They're coming in hot.
Look at that. Pouring in.
Our fun question for the day is inspired by a trip that Merritt will be taking to Italy in a few weeks. And we were talking about Italian cuisine. So what is your favorite Italian dish? This is very hard for me being Italian. I love all Italian dishes. But I think I'm going to go with risotto because I don't get it often, and it's kind of a pain to make, so I don't make it often either. But when I do, I'm always excited about it.
Do you use white wine in your risotto when you make it,
I
Katrina?
do.
Okay.
Unless I forgot, and then I just use chicken broth. But I do really like
My wife makes it a lot, and she never uses the white wine, so I never actually tried it with that in it. So we'll have to see how that goes.
We have to use both, right? I mean,
well, you do have to use both, yes, but she just eschews that for ease, I think, and cost. Honestly,
carbonara,
just using the
ravioli. I do love lobster ravioli too, actually. What about you, Merritt? Is there anything you're gonna try to find when you're trying to dish?
Well, I was lucky enough to also go to Sicily back in a couple months ago, and I ate a ton of mortadella there. So I just want to eat more mortadella sandwiches. I will say the most interesting thing I ate was a pane cameusa, and I'll copy that and drop that into the chat if someone wants to look up what that is. It was an amazingly interesting sandwich I ate while I was in Sicily. They didn't tell me what was in it until after I ate it, and I'm glad they didn't. But it was it's quite a thing. It's I recommend it to anyone to try it at least once. Well, yeah, many will try it only one time.
Somebody help us out with that, please. Now I'm curious.
Let's see. Got a lot of good ones in here. What about you, Bill? Do you have a fave?
I mean, I don't even know if I answer, but just generically, eggplant parm. I mean, that's is a
that was a good one.
Yeah, it's consistent winner for me.
I think one of the best parts about growing up is the fact that I've expanded my palate to enjoy things like eggplant. Now I prefer an eggplant parm sandwich over like a meatball parm sandwich. So,
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, I know. Hey, you never know. It's harder to make a good one. So when you find a good one, it's you stick to it.
Not Fazoli's.
Not Fazoli's, no.
I want fast food Italian.
What was the initial question?
Yeah,
oh, good question. What's your favorite Italian food?
Yeah, Italian dish.
All right. Well, good work, Katrina, on the
I'm glad that came up.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's get started here. We're about 4 after, and lots of work to do today.
That's right, Brittany.
All right. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. My name is Katrina McAfee. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing here at A2. This is our Analytics in Action webinar series. So this 6 months of this year, we've been focused on navigating the member journey with data. So today is actually our last session of that series. I guess sub-series within the Analytics and Action series. So your hosts today are Bill Conforti, as always, our SVP of Strategy and Solutions. And then actually we have Merritt, our Senior Solutions Advisor, returning. He was actually on
good to be back.
First webinar of this series. So we brought him back for the last one to round it out. So super excited to have everyone here for us to talk about KPIs today. We're going to discuss using your data to create, track, and report your association KPIs. And I think I'm turning it over to one of you. Don't know which. Well, I already did your intros.
All right, we already did the intros. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with the agenda. It's really simple today. Intro and polls as usual. So grab your phones, get those ready for some poll questions. We're going to talk about three keys. Performance management, organization-wide performance management, and 3 easy steps, and that's plan, design, and share. We're going to do Q&A at the end, but really it's going to be throughout. And as a matter of fact, I always say this, but I really want everyone to participate today. There's a bunch of poll questions. There's lots of things we're going to ask you to comment on or give us info on in the chat. And so, yeah, really appreciate your participation. So thanks in advance for that. Okay, so as Katrina said, this is part 6 of 6, which basically means we're going to be taking all of the things that we did in parts 1 through 5 and talking about how to summarize all of that in a way that's meaningful for senior leadership and for boards of directors and things like that. And we're going to talk a lot about organizational plans and how to align KPIs and metrics, to those plans, and then ultimately how to build that into dashboards, right? So, and also I just want to quickly tease our next series. It's going to be a 3-part series, and this is going to be about data and AI and how to transform membership marketing and leadership more generally with data and AI. So hopefully we'll see some of you on those. And yeah. So info on that is also coming up. All right. So Merritt, tell us about who is A2.
Of course, I'm glad to do it. So it's me and Bill. We're A2. Now, we are an Arlington-based technology company dedicated to associations. We work with people like you in the chat, people like you in the audience, people all over the association space to help you get the most out of your data, right? Our analytics platform we developed called Acumen is the cream of the crop as far as helping associations to leverage their data properly to understand their members, to get all their different systems working together, watching lockstep to help you achieve those goals. The things we're going to talk about today. We've got a whole team of people like Bill and myself who know data, who know associations, who know what it takes to get data working for you to answer those questions you do have. We've got a lot of clients who really love us, as you can probably tell from that that client retention rate, and we've been doing this for over 20 years. We know what we're talking about. I mean, if you've sat through all 6 of these sessions now with Bill, I've liked them. I think they've been brilliant. You can tell he knows what he's talking about, and he's just tip of the iceberg, as they say, as far as the knowledge we have here at the team. So that's us, the people who know data and know associations.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Merritt. Okay, let's get our phones out. It is poll time. So, first question.
Good one.
My association has clear KPIs that are shared across the organization to communicate and measure progress on key strategic objectives.
A really multifaceted question.
Agree or disagree? Yeah, so if you've seen any of our previous webinars, we've often talked about what we call the double barrel question. And double barrel is when you basically ask, 2 different things, and you ask me to agree or disagree. And it's like, well, do you want me to agree or disagree with all of it or just part of it? And so that makes it tough to answer. And that is a sin when it comes to survey questions. But when it comes to something like this, where we plan to discuss it, right after the fact, it's actually a really useful tool, right? Because I'm asking you not only to say that you have clear KPIs, you communicate them across the organization, and you use them to measure progress. And so things are kind of evening out a little bit. So if you're thinking about this, maybe you're wondering, well, hey, look, I have clear KPIs, but we don't really do a good job of sharing them, right? Or we don't really share them across the org, but we just share them really within our team. Or yeah, we have them, but they're just not very clear. So there's all kinds of things, right? Or maybe we communicate them, but we're not good at taking action. So so it looks like most of us are kind of somewhere in the center, right? On average, we're at about a 2.6. Few of us have this thing totally licked. We have all those KPIs, they're clear, nice. They're well communicated across the org. Yeah, so if you're in that 6%, I want to definitely want to hear from you, throughout this. And maybe you stumbled on this one by accident, right? This webinar, but I assume that you'll have some good insights, for us as we go through. A lot of us in the center, and then right around 20, just under 20% of us are not even close, right? So I don't know.
I'd love to know where the stumbling block is for a lot of these people, right? Whether it's they don't have the KPIs, but they do communicate and measure, which would be interesting. But I wonder if it's just the being able to communicate or what it is. I wonder which and they're tripping up on. That'd be interesting to kind of hear about.
Great question. So if you wouldn't mind to jump in the chat and tell us that, right? If you're one of the 94% of us, right, that's not that doesn't have this problem totally licked, then tell us what it is that's giving you trouble. That would be great to hear about. Right. So I expect there's going to be really 2 things. Not really sure what to measure, right? Or we're not measuring the right things, not clear KPIs, and then sharing them across the org, right? So we have a plan, but they're not clear KPIs. Yeah. So I think that is pretty common. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go forward. So So from there, I'm going to go to what you'll all kind of be familiar by now if you've seen ours before. By rule of three, we're going to break this down into 3 easy steps. And you know, it's KPIs and it's communicating all of that. All of that kind of rolls up to what I call organization performance management. And we're going to break it out into 3 steps. And we're going to spend most of the time on the first step. So you got a plan. You have to know, you know, what you're measuring and why, you know, about the audience and all that. We have to design a dashboard in a visual way, ideally visual, right? We have to design a way to communicate and share those data points across the organization, and we have to have good ways to make sure that there's collaboration over that. And we'll dive
a lot of
into
responses back in the chat, by the way, Bill, just about different people's stumbling blocks. I'm just anyway, continue. I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm just
That's okay.
fascinated by the different issues and questions people have.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Not sure what to measure and not about sharing use them. I would say sometimes it's not even that we don't know what to measure. It's that we don't know how to measure what is in our strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
Because you think about strategic plans, and all of us have those on our website. They're really interesting documents to read. But if you think about how you would translate that into something measurable and something that you would actually measure performance against, I think that is that's where some of the difficulty comes in. So
Cliff in the chat points out, actually, I wanted to mention, I was having a conversation with the membership director just the other day, and they were talking about their strategic plan, and they literally used the phrase vibes-based goals, which I laughed, but I think really the thing was they didn't actually have a way to measure, right? They didn't actually have a clear goal to reach for. So it's like Cliff says in the chat, they want to grow, but like, what do we mean by that? What are we talking about? So it's about having, like you said, having strategic goals that actually are achievable and make sense to people. So I think it's interesting. That's right,
cool.
Meredith vibes.
So all you guys, everyone in the chat right now, thank you for all of that input. And that is exactly what the kinds of things that you're describing. That's what we're going to try to flesh out in today's conversation, right? So first we have to plan, and again that involves a bunch of steps, which we'll dive into. But I mean, the most important one is, what are we going to measure, and how are we going to measure it, right? And to a lesser degree, why, right? But you know, we assume that some of the why is kind of inherent in those kinds of goals. So let's jump into that a little bit. So pillars, right? Man, why are we looking at pillars, right? What is does anybody know what we're looking at in this picture, by the way? I'll get a gold star prize to anyone who knows what
I think I have the answer if no one else.
Anybody? Parthenon's close. It is Greece, yes.
It's Greece. Is Meredith right? It is the Acropolis, is it not?
This is the Temple of Poseidon, which does admittedly look a lot like the Acropolis.
Oh, no way. Okay.
But yeah,
Tricky on you right there,
it's
but
about
my
an hour
goodness.
or so. Yeah. Anyway, it's a great picture. This was a couple of years ago in Greece. But in any case, great picture, nice pillars, and you know, for years and years, pillars have been the thing that represents, you know, almost all strategic plans, even if they don't get actually published this way, but it's, you know, kind of the way that you think about it. You know, here's a couple of them. You see pillars for things just like broad things like membership, education, advocacy, right? We'll talk about some of those things. Our therapy association says advocacy, connection, DEI, education, research, and leadership, right? So they are the 2 things they have in common is you see a lot of the same types of pillars in different strategic plans, but also they have in common that very often they're not readily measurable, right? So Merritt, what you see these pillars a lot, right? Merritt reads a lot of strategic plans.
I read several a week at the very least, and I would be lying if I didn't see a lot of the same things over and over. It's just things. It's always around trying to do things like enhance organizational awareness among whether it's the industry or people go, you know, worldwide, or kind of like Cliff was mentioning, you know, just like wanting to grow, but then how do we grow? What does that mean? What is growth? It's all about educating their members and other stakeholders as well on multiple platforms, or empowering communities. Engagement is always a big one, right? I think that one's been a kind of a major buzzword for from what I can tell in reading older ones, decades at this point. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of things that are strategically important, but then kind of like we were talking about a few minutes ago, what does that mean? How do we get there? What is the beginning? What is that big middle between, current state and future state that I think we kind of talk about a lot?
So what so give us a couple. I asked Merritt
Hmm.
to just pull up a couple of strategic plans from from some of our customers without naming any names.
Of course.
What are some good pillars that you see here?
I anonymized a few of these. So improve long-term sustainability to support the organization's mission. That's a trade association. Let's see, grow membership to reflect the diversity of that profession's ecosystem. Build strong networks of member engagement. That's always a very popular one. Um, enhance organizational, I already mentioned that. Foster global outreach by advancing in
Hmm.
knowledge, education, awareness of their industry's focus around the world. So again, all things that sound very high-minded and very good and very important. But then again, what does that mean? And
Exactly.
how do I measure my global outreach, right? What is it? Is it Twitter impressions or is it something more concrete than that?
All right, awesome. Thanks, Merritt. Okay,
Mhm.
so with all of that in the back of your mind, we're going to our next poll question. And this one is fun, right? This is free text. So as we get some responses here, we're going to get a little word cloud popping up. One of our pillars is blank, right? And Merritt's were very specific. Those were kind of like getting into some goals even. You can
Mhm.
keep it high level, but I saw some, Jordan and maybe a couple of others put
Yep.
things in the
Innovation, that's a
chat.
big one.
Remember, right? Yeah.
Advocacy is always the biggest sticking point for a lot of organizations I've talked with as far as measuring success, I think, because it's tough.
Presenting the answers a little differently than I thought. Whoops, sorry about that.
Advocacy 4, education 3. So yeah, okay.
Information, yeah.
I like
Okay.
connection. Connection's an interesting one because again, it's important, whether it's communities, whether it's engagement, but again,
Tough
quantifying.
to, tough to measure. Yeah. So that
Yeah.
one, you have to give that one some thought.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So in one of our old webinars where I was joined by Greg Pollock, we had some kind of a challenge where we challenged the audience to give us some sort of metric, and that seemed immeasurable, and that we would figure out a good
Yeah.
metric, a way to measure it. And we weren't, no one stumped us on that one, but I don't, that's not a challenge. I'm not saying that you can't
Yeah.
now. So,
Do that
all right.
mention advocacy. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so these are some of the things, and you will see a lot of these come up, later on in today's conversation. But essentially, they, if you think about all those different kinds of pillars, you can bucket them in probably lots of different ways, right? That you could categorize or bucket these, but it all comes down to measuring things that matter, and very often, they can be grouped into things related to growth, to operational performance, to certainly to member experience. Quality is one that we've talked about before, and I actually don't see as much of that in strategic plans as you might expect, and we'll
Hmm.
talk more about some of those metrics, that what I even mean by that, and what some of the metrics could be, and then other, right? And so sometimes we call these the immeasurables, but essentially these are things like um, you know, visibility and thought leadership and stuff like that, like things that don't really fit into one of those other categories very neatly, and also very often are things that are hard to measure, right? So we'll dive into those a little bit more, but we're going to play a game, and lots of people on today. So maybe some of you have played this game before. If you have, you won't really have a big advantage because all of the actual questions are new, but the name of the game is, how do you measure that? Okay, so so what we're gonna do, and I thought about doing this over phones, but we'll just do it in the chat. I'm gonna put up a slide, and on that slide, it's gonna have a pillar, right? And under that pillar, there'll be a goal. And what we're trying to do is kind of, if you think about how these work, it's almost like a funnel, like a prospect funnel or a sales funnel or email marketing funnel, things like that. It's like at the top level are things like those broader buckets that we just looked at, kind of, or you could think of the pillars really as the top, but there's some crossover between that. But after the pillar, there's usually, because you never just say advocacy, right? You have advocacy, and then you have some bullet points with some specific goals, or often not specific enough, but they're more specific than just the word advocacy. And those are your goals, right? And underneath your goals, there are methods, right? Because you don't just say, we want to improve advocacy. You say, we want to improve advocacy by doing blank, blank, and blank. And all of those blanks are your goals. And then one level down below that are the metrics that help you monitor performance against those goals, right? So, intuitively, that's what we're always doing when we're trying to establish our KPIs. But just think about that visually and mentally go through the process of working down the funnel, right? From the pillar to the goal, to the method, to the metric. And if you do that, then that will help you to make some things measurable that might not be so obvious. All right. So we'll put up the first slide, and appreciate everyone's participation in the chat. First one, how do you measure that? Strengthen our brand.
Oh, that's a good
right?
one.
You see that pillar a lot, right, Mary?
Yeah, it's important. People want me need to make sure people that they're well known, that people know about them, but again,
Right. So I took an actual, like, well-known pillar from many of the strategic plans that we see, and then I tried to generically generate a goal statement that would support that. So kind of fill it in a little bit on your own for things that apply to your organization. All right, event growth, net promoter, clicks, brand perception.
oh, interesting. Oh, wait a minute, that's Katrina.
Katrina, you might have to come back in and talk about
Oh,
brand
goodness.
perception before. So what do we even mean when we say strengthen our brand, right? There's a lot to that, right? There is awareness, there's visibility, right? Which is, overlapping, but not exactly the same as awareness. A lot of time we see that we want to be the go-to resource, the authoritative resource in our field, right? There's a lot more competition now than there used to be, right? So there's like competition for mind share, right? For relevance, for education, right? Being a provider of education, right? Hard to compete with free, very often, for some of us. So, okay, wow, there's a lot of
Jennifer putting revenue in there is a good, interesting take on what strengthening the brand. Is it a financial strength? So it's one of those things where even if you don't, like we're talking about, if you don't define things correctly, then you seek the wrong thing, I suppose.
Brand is such a broad term that it affects all of the things, including revenue. And so that's why you have you have to work down, right? The goal, and then to the method. And if your goal and your method are related to revenue, then I have no problem with revenue being one of your KPIs. So
I like yours as well. That's very good. Yeah. Speaker requests. People want to be affiliated with you. That's interesting. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay. So here are some, right? I think that the chat can be shared afterwards. Katrina, you have to weigh in and tell us about that, because there's going to be lots of good stuff in the chat that you can
could help a lot of people
that you can use after the fact. But here's some, right? Social media. This is one of those cases where I think reach and impressions, things like that, it was very fashionable to call those vanity metrics, before. But I think for strengthening the brand, I think it's totally legitimate. NPS, a lot of people brought up web analytics. I think, we focus a lot on member metrics, but if you expand that out to non-members, that are attending your events or just interacting with your association in some ways, that speaks to, brand awareness and kind of making a bigger tent, so to speak. Some people brought up press, I think, media stuff, so some of these things would not necessarily make the first page of your main KPI dashboard, but I think a lot of these are really strong for monitoring progress towards strengthening the brands, right? right? Even Linda says growth in membership, right? Of course, right? That is again, right? Using the brand broadly, revenue, membership, all of those things are relevant as well. Anything?
And I think I was going to say too, but I think of kind of what we're seeing people say here, and we'll kind of notice as we go through these slides and kind of continue our conversation, how many of the things overlap, right? And going back to even earlier on in at the beginning of the webinar, how many people don't communicate all these things across the organization, and so you don't realize how much overlap you have in what you're doing versus other departments and things like that too. But
yeah,
interesting to consider how there people are saying things we didn't expect in something that we thought was going to be more, social media and press engagements and brand perception, things of that nature.
okay. Here's a softball. Member growth and
Here we
engagement,
go.
right? So we teed this whole thing up by saying, hey, some of these things are not very easily measured. Now, membership growth, right? That's pretty easily measured. Engagement, not as easy, but at least we know some of the metrics that we would use. But yeah, your membership numbers, let's just go straight to it here, right? Engagement score. Now that, we have many hours of webinar programming on how to do engagement scoring. Encourage you to take a look at those. But once you have it, I mean, it's something that you should use. You should track it over time. Numbers of members, retention rates, counts of activities, not necessarily weighted stuff and engagement scores, but just overall counts, total members year over year. What else? Anything else, Mary?
Engagement scoring members. I mean, whenever I read this stuff, it's all about delving at different member types. You know what I mean? Like expanding the maybe you should perhaps the pool of potential members is a way to kind of track it, to do this, and then also to track it to understand you're expanding that reach, which could circle back.
Okay.
The brand thing also, but yeah, and engagement doesn't always have to be members, right?
All right. How, as we go to this next one, I want to ask a question. How many of us are with associations that have a current or recent digital transformation? I should have made this into a poll because I bet it's a big number.
Yeah.
Digital transformation, let us know. So this one is innovation, right? A few of us mentioned that as pillars in our current plan, and it's it's something like we want to use new technologies, data-driven insights to provide better service or more value, fill in the blank, right, to our members, right? So utilization of AI. I actually didn't even think about that. That is a very good one. And I imagine that more and more, especially in 24 and on, plans are going to have a lot more AI-related line items, and especially considering the teeing up the next webinar series about AI and data. I'm very surprised that I didn't include that, but thank you for that.
Getting ready to. There you go. Another getting ready to do a digital transformation from Heather over there.
Okay, so this one, I'm looking for some good suggestions here for the group. So if you think about innovation, very often it's something to do with that digital transformation, or we're launching a new website, or we're changing our AMS. And when you do that, you want to look at things like are people adopting the technology that we're investing in? Look at usage rates, churn, right? Something we all care about for our members, but how many people start using that new platform when you buy it and then it trails off over time? Do you spend money on R&D, right? Looking at R&D, when you break down other expense buckets, it's typically looked at as a percentage of your overall revenue. You have a certain percentage set aside for marketing, a certain percentage set aside for member acquisition, so forth. Do you have that for R&D, and are you deliberate, right, about maintaining that over time? So let's see, stickiness, okay. AI. I think that's probably should even add that before we send out the deck. AI programs. Even though I didn't think of it, I think for the benefit of the group, if you look back at this later, that might be something that you would benefit from. So okay, let's go. We got a couple more of these, and love all the feedback. So please keep it up. Here's one that again we see all the time. Yeah, we want to do a better job of advocating for our members, for policies that protect and promote the interests of our industry and our members. So it's always something like that, right? It's some kind of statement. What are some of the ways that we can measure the success of our advocacy programs. Enacted legislation.
That's a good one there, and yeah, and it's one of those things too. It's like, how do you what does that mean then? I don't know. It's such a hard one to judge because it's soft so often. You know what I mean? It is about like bills passed or not. Is it?
Yeah, Jennifer
Pack
says
growth
size,
is.
size of the pack. That's a good
You
one.
know what? There you go. Yeah. Amicus briefs. Those are words I recognize. There you go.
Regional advocacy.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. So look, let's show you the things that we did think of, and appreciate
This is Capitol Hill. Okay, yeah.
all of the great suggestions, right? So obviously, in particular, if you're doing engagement scoring, advocacy is important. You want to have counts of participation in this program, so members care about it enough to take the time to participate. All right, you probably might look at, hey, what are the bills that we supported? What are the ones we opposed? And what was ultimately the outcome of those bills?
Mhm.
Public awareness is that's very similar to visibility and brand awareness. You can use some of the same metrics for that. Maybe if you do member surveys or satisfaction surveys, encourage you to ask members how they feel about your advocacy things. Now, there's a ton of really good ones here, and if advocacy is a key part of your value proposition to members, really encourage you to now I really encourage you to track some of these things. So I am curious though, these are all like really awesome ideas. However, I have to say, and this is totally anecdotal, that when we talk with prospects about advocacy, I don't necessarily see a lot of associations that are tracking all of these things. So just out of curiosity, are these actual things that your association does, or are these sort of aspirational and things that you would, it's, and then don't get me wrong, we do it a lot too. It's not always, sometimes you recommend, to do what I say and not as I do. So if that's, other than the money to the pack. Okay. Anyway, so that's
I agree with you,
just,
Bill. That's something I hear a lot. Is it's a desire to do these things as opposed to an actual way to track these successes sometimes. Because advocacy can be a bit of a black box. Obviously, money to the pack is always nice, but it can be a bit of a black box because you are just it's influencing people and humans being mysterious creatures that we are. It can be hard to kind of track such a thing. So yeah.
All right. Awesome. So so we're gonna move on, and I would say, I never like to use absolute terms, but next one is, I would say it's on every strategic plan in some form or fashion. And so all of us have thought a lot about this. So let's give it some additional thought now and see how we can track our performance and improve and do better in this area. So diversity, equity, and inclusion. And a goal might be something like commit to a culture of diversity, ensuring that our organization not only reflects the diversity of the industries and communities we represent, but promotes equity and opportunities and access, and creates an environment where all members feel valued and empowered. That's well said. I think that one, you can sort of detect that one is AI assisted.
Oh, it sounded great. What are you talking about? You're a fine writer.
I'll admit to that, right? But this one in particular is right. So depends on what you said as a goal. Yeah, great point, Barb. Right. So thinking about the pillar, and then the goal, and then the methods. Right. The methods are going to be different, and then obviously getting down to the metrics. Right. So some people are already jumping ahead to metrics, leadership, survey responses, and so here are some. There are a lot. So if you think about on the left side are more like, if you're a professional association, these are ways to measure progress on diversity of your actual membership, right? So things like, obviously you need to have and collect good demographic data, right? So you look at trends and demographics. You want to look at representation, within different groups, which is just basically a way of, you can do that by filtering and segmentation. If you offer, training, either to staff or to members in these areas. You want to look at participation in those things. Obviously, you want to reflect it in your hiring and your recruitment for your internal staff and any programs that you have across any area, really, but in particular, in this one, really want to collect and be deliberate about looking at your evaluation and your assessments in that area. So, so those are pretty broad. I realize that it's not as cut and dried as like a ratio or a statistic, but those are, I think, good things to consider for professional associations. And on the right side is more for trades, right? And so if I'm a trade association, it might be part of my mission, probably should be, to help my member organizations do better with, with DEI inside their own companies. So you're already doing, things like salary assessments or benchmarking surveys for salaries and benefits and, sales volume and other things like that. So DEI is something you could add to that. Resource usage, you're providing all of these resources. Do they download the papers? Do they, participate in the focused networking and the collaborations that you offer? And again, training, participation, right? So if you training being one of those other kinds of resources that you can offer, and especially with trades, very often it's things that are included in member benefits, and so all the more important to monitor usage in those areas. Okay, let's see. Just give me 1 sec to quickly scan the chat. Graphic surveys.
Nancy had a good point.
Qualitative.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. Yeah, that's it's interestingly enough. I have to say, I've already learned a few things just by the chat here. But yeah, so we do have we have accessibility just when it comes to design, right? You'll see that we did think about that. I'll give Katrina credit for that. Did think about that when it comes to design of our dashboards and kind of sharing of information. But as a something to track for DEI purposes, honestly, it didn't occur. So thank you, Nancy, for that suggestion. And I would say that there are a lot of potential ways to define diversity. So when you think about a group that might be underrepresented, there are lots of different ways that you can comprise that group. So again, that gets to the idea of thinking down from goals to methods and ultimately to metrics, right?
Break down that pillar, yeah.
All right, last one, I think, and this one, again, like DEI, it's on every single strategic plan that I believe I have read in some form or fashion, and we want to advance the profession. And I think this might be the hardest one. How do we measure that, right? Promote the continuous advancement and recognition of our profession.
Because it kind of folds back to the first one also a little bit, just the brand as a whole, like what is the difference there? How do they overlap, that sort of thing? So yeah. As one builds a strategic plan, it can be difficult to parse those. And then you realize, again, you got to have that unified front when you put out a strategic plan. So all this stuff kind of comes together. In the top, where all those pillars, someone found the name for whatever that's part. I think it's the frieze that's on the top of all the pillars. Anyway.
So yes, I mean, this was an interesting one, right? Because my first inclination was like, this is going to be the hardest one. It's going to be the hardest one to measure. And then once I started the process of thinking through it, again, thinking down to methods and goals, I came up with a lot, and even a lot that the slide just became too long and stopped at advocacy, but there could have been a lot more things on it, right? So we had someone, certifications, accreditations, of course, right? Attract student and early career members. Yeah, that's a good one. In particular, student memberships are often very inexpensive, if not free. And then, but you lose a lot of them, right? Because they either don't become professionals in that field, or, they don't join the association. So you want to look at those transitions. I think industry trends, like is your industry growing, right? What's the total market for members and prospects in your industry? And it's tough to make the direct connection, but I think the professional associations can reasonably, take some credit for that. if there's growth in particular segments, especially. Do you have leadership programs, mentoring programs? Look at the success rate and the impact of those programs. Again, getting down to an exact metric on that, admittedly, that's going to be a challenge, but it's one that's worthwhile, and you should at least try to come up with a good proxy for that. If you have fellowship or honorary distinguished members, right? How are those things going? Most associations have something like that, and if you keep track of that, highly recommend that. Achievements. This is a really good one, right? Do your members get articles published, right? Do they achieve notable things that are publicized in the media or otherwise? Win awards, right? Those kinds of things.
Scarletta mentioned in the chat, for professional post-nominals or promotions, things like that too, just kind of helping them grow their own careers as well. Very good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's good, Tabar. When civilians, right?
Yeah, that's my favorite one
understand
so
the
far.
progression we advance. Yeah, that's good, right? I mean,
Yeah.
You've done, you've increased visibility, right? You've certainly strengthened the brand, but especially for associations that have, they don't just serve members; they have a public-facing, part of their mission. So if you're one of those, then the more broadly, the public understands it, of course, the better job you've done. So yeah, all of those things advance the profession. Agreed. So with all of that, you might end up with something like this. You'd have some KPIs that would be bucketed out, something like this, and they would be related to growth, to performance, member experience, to quality, and maybe some other stuff, right? Like the visibility and thought leadership. Now, really quickly on quality, right? Because we didn't actually address that one as one of the pillars, but here we're talking about things like member satisfaction. Like if you keep track of if you have a ticketing system or service request system, you want to keep track of trends there. Like you're doing a better job if people don't complain as much, right? Or if you're solving problems that they have internally. You have compliance, right? You have regulations that you need to stay in compliance with. Those are things that are worthwhile quality metrics. Data governance, internal project delivery, right? We talked about it with innovation. We have all sorts of internal projects. Are you doing a good job of delivering those things? So internal quality, which helps to do a better job in all the other areas, if that's important to you. And of course it's important, but if it's on your strategic plan and if it's kind of rises to that level, then you need to think through some metrics for that as well. Okay, so now we're 45 minutes in now, and aside from the Italian dishes and everything
Let's
that we
go back to
talked
that.
about, we talked a lot about planning. Now we're going to, in the last 10 or 15, we're going to talk through design and sharing. Okay, so starting with design, and this is not going to be a class on design. There are lots of resources available to that, but I just want to make a couple of quick points when it comes to design. And when I talk about this, I'm really talking about a dashboard, right? So when we say KPIs, we think of dashboards. We think it's about performance management. It's all basically built around, obviously you have to be measuring the right things and you have to commit them to good metrics, but you have to create something visual that everyone can work from. And so couple of tips, right? Use trends and use conditional formatting, right? It's not as useful if it's just a static number, right? We have to give it some context. We want to be, don't use a lot of colors unless you make them meaningful. It's not an art project, right? So don't be tempted to be too fancy, right? Too complicated, right? It should be visually clear and it should be intuitive, right? There's a very good reason, that line charts and bar charts are most common, right? Because I can look at those and in 2 seconds, I can see trends, I can see directional things. I do want to make it accessible. I don't want to use colors that are not, so what kinds of things are we talking about here, Merritt, right? It's contrast colors, these text descriptions, things like that. And then
use color to highlight rather than for just for being pretty kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Something important. Yeah.
Yes, I think there, you can sort of do it one of two ways. You can tell us about it, but I think summarizing the stuff that you have, or you can kind of custom build something, right? So this is kind of how we do it in Acne. What are we looking at here?
So this is again those kind of 10,000-foot view, so to speak, the kind of overall wrapping, kind of consolidating all the points of, as you can, if you read closely, everything around events or membership or engagement, or is that sales in the background there, or an old friend? Yeah, all those different kind of main overarching themes within that sort of piece of the business, right? How is membership doing overall? How is our events doing overall? And then being able to compile all that in one place to get all the insights you need at a glance, right? Say you're just, again, talking about strategic planning, you're talking about the overarching goals, having those pillars like we talked about all in one place to see the trends, quantify those things we've been discussing is really what we are, we like to help associations achieve.
Yeah. And so very often it's you would think about it as one particular page, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, right?
No.
It could be one summary page and then some underlying tabs. I mean, it can't be too crazy, but if some of the things are kind of like the above the fold metrics and some other things are supportive of that, I think that's totally fine as well. Now the other thing you can do is you can custom build it, right? So we did one about a year ago, and
really cool.
yeah, and this was KPI dashboard that we looked at. I brought it back today for a couple reasons. It has the pillars, it has the audiences, right, that we're targeting with those goals. It has metrics, which are X'd out, but that's okay. It has them. It has performance. It is using red and blue instead of red and green for accessibility reasons. And I think the biggest thing that I like about this is it looks like the strategic plan. It reminds me of it. So when I look at this, I know that I'm looking at performance against the strategic plan. So if you want to do something custom, then I would highly recommend something like this. This is done in Power BI. You can learn how to do the design part of this. You could learn how to do in a few days. Getting all the KPIs and everything together might take a bit longer than that.
I do love this just because it really does put all those sort of flowery words into context, and kind of, like I mentioned earlier, getting those vibes into somewhere that is quantifiable. So I love this design personally. I was blown away when I saw this come out.
Yeah. So Rachel's asking about why red and blue versus
Great
red
question.
and green. I'm not an expert on this, honestly, but as I understand that red and green color combinations are difficult for people with color blindness,
Right, Andrew?
and the blue works better for that reason. So it's strictly for accessibility reasons. All right, so that's the 5-minute design course. Don't spend a lot of time on that, because it's, as long as the design is somewhat intuitive and it's not distracting, right? As long as it doesn't prevent me from reading your dashboard, your design is good enough. Now there can be great design, right? But I kind of view that the same way that I do websites, right? I mean, I personally think that websites are a line item where the expense related to the return on investment is just not there, very often. If you have a web.
Oh no, we lost Bill. Now I can talk about Italian food more. I don't know where he was going with that point, but he'll be back in just a few minutes. He's been having a couple internet issues. There he is. Is he back? There you are, Bill.
Oh, really?
You cut out on us. I was going to talk about Italian food again, but never mind. Never mind.
It wasn't. You didn't miss much. It wasn't that important. Okay, so let's get into. We got a few minutes left. Let's talk about how we're going to share. Right, we have to collaborate over this stuff. We have to share it. Otherwise, we've wasted our time. So. So one way we can share is ad hoc. So you can read this. This is a real email, and I didn't do it on purpose. I just thought of it like after the fact that we should put this in the webinar deck. It's a real email I sent today to a colleague in our company that I see all the time. I said, "Hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. I have a meeting coming up, and I really need an update on this project or this issue. Can we meet to discuss? All right, can you update me on this? So I would bet that almost all of us have sent an email similar to this in the nearest, today or recently in the last week or so. And this applies to our data as well. It's like, hey, Mary, can you send me the latest report on this, right? Or can you send me the latest numbers, right? And we look at our financial numbers, when we get that big booklet, once every 3 months or whatever. But the point is that we're doing this on an ad hoc basis, right? Especially in budget planning. So yeah, so right. So I was a little, embarrassed about having sent this message after putting together, a webinar for today, talking about how we should be sharing this stuff. If we had organization-wide performance, then we're going to remove a lot of that, right? I mean, so not everything is strategic in nature and it's going to be on your dashboard. So you're still gonna do some of that, but we want to remove some of that. We want to assign an owner. We want to make it easy, right? We want to, right? I mean, people don't voluntarily log in and look at the dashboards as often as we'd like. Isn't that true? All right. So we have to prompt them. We can subscribe them so they get the dashboard like once a week or once a month or whatever. But I think it's important to establish a cadence, right? Well, first of all, to agree that the KPIs in the organization strategy is something that you should meet about, and then establish the cadence for when that you want to do that, right? And I don't know, probably weekly is too frequently, monthly
once a
maybe
month,
too much, maybe once a quarter or something like that. But what we see, and I don't know what, at least anecdotally, it seems that we address, and I include, Merritt and I in this group, as associations, we address strategic plans once every 2 or 4 years, however long your plan is. You get it up on the website and then you revisit, 3 months before, you're due for.
How do we do? Yeah.
And so I would submit that what we want to be doing is having meetings that are action oriented. So meetings with actions that are not merely updates, right? So we are, Merritt and I kind of work in the sales organization in our company, and we're pretty guilty of this, right? We have meetings where they're just updates. Hey, how's it going, right? How's it going with this? And we tell stories, right? We give the numbers and we tell stories, and then I'll ask a bunch of questions and get clarification, and we'll establish some actions, but it's really actions that are going to happen after the meeting.
Yeah.
And it's mostly to clarify things that we couldn't fully answer while we were in the meeting, right? And so in the very best case, we end up with a good, solid understanding of where things are, right? A good routine.
Where we've been and where we are. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not where we're going yet. And I think that's a tough point. Yeah.
So what we'd like to be doing is, if we had that organization-wide performance dashboard, then we could all review the dashboard, before the meetings. We could identify trends, outliers, anomalies, things like that. Whatever it is, we're going to identify the things that need discussion, right? So we're not going to discuss everything. We're not going to get an update on every single item, but we're going to take those that need discussing. We're going to go deeper, right? Root cause analysis, things like that. And in that case, we can develop plans and assign tasks and really, I don't know, like, how many times are you in a meeting say, look, we're not here to solution, right? We're going to parking lot that item, right? And we're just really creating lists, and we're fleshing things out and getting updates. But wouldn't it be a better use of our time if we did some of that ahead of the meeting, and we could actually solve some problems, right? So we're into dynamic strategy sessions rather than routine updates. Yeah, could this meeting have been an email? Right, great question. Yeah, right. This is
mostly yes.
Right. Okay, so I think that's most of what we wanted to cover. I want to open it up for questions. We have about 5 minutes left.
5 minutes.
If anyone has something, a question, comment, if anyone that's part of the 4 or 5% that has clear KPIs, that shares them across the organization and uses them to take action, if you would like to
Just give us an
Share,
insight or
share any,
something.
share any
Yeah,
wisdom with the group.
yeah, please, by all means.
That would be amazing. Or just identify yourself and we'll all sort of, be secretly jealous.
Yeah, bug you individually. Yeah.
All right. Any words of wisdom for the group before we'll give everybody back 2-3 minutes of their day? Any jokes? Merritt's a real funny guy. I told him I was gonna put him on the spot and have.
Here's a great one, just to tie everything up, right? What do you call a fake noodle? An impasta. Hey, all right. Everyone's applauding. Everyone's enjoying themselves. I'm here all week.
All right. Well, I eat some chip already. Okay.
Nicely so.
All right. So there we go. If you want to take a look at Acumen, it's not a sales pitch for the product, but it does do a pretty good job of compiling data across different sources. You can then be pretty flexible about how you create dashboards based on that. Sharing capabilities are built in. Now, taking action and meeting cadences and all of that. Fortunately, there's no magic for that. You still have to go through the hard work of working down through your strategic plan and getting to some meaningful metrics. I mean, some of them will be built in, but a lot of things are going to be specific to your organization. So it'll be helpful, but there's still a lot of work to be done here. And but if you want to take a look, QR code is there, and hopefully we will see most or all of you in our upcoming series about data and AI. Thank you, Merritt,
Hey, thank you.
For joining us today. And
always a pleasure.
Ciao. There we go. We'll see everyone soon. Have a great day.
Later on.